Sup, nerds? Today we're diving into a topic that combines food, history, and a little bit of international controversy. Haggis! It's Scotland's national dish, and believe it or not, it's been illegal in the United States for decades. But why? What's the story behind this haggis ban? I'm King Trout, and 2 months ago I went out to go buy smokes, but unlike your father, I came back.
Yay!
First things first, what is haggis? Well, haggis is a savory pudding, in the UK sense of the term, made from a sheep's heart, liver, and lungs, chopped up with onions, oatmeal, suet, which is just animal fat, spices, and salt. You stuff all that inside of a sheep's stomach and boil it, which sounds disgusting, let's be honest. It is objectively a very gross-looking and sounding food. But hey, nobody ever accused the British Isles of producing good food. It's kind of their thing they famously suck at. But regardless, it's a dish absolutely reeking with history, tradition, and allegedly it actually tastes pretty good. According to an English language translation of La Ruse Gastronomique, although its description is not immediately appealing, haggis has an excellent nutty texture and delicious savory flavor. And that was written by a French guy. And their whole thing is that they're the global arbiters on what food tastes good. You know, like in that movie where the filthy, disgusting rat uses his ginger slave to cook for him by pulling his hair. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, haggis. Where did it come from? Where did it go? Where did it come from? Nobody knows. Seriously, nobody knows the origin of the recipe. There are stories about the Romans creating it, or sheep herders moving sheep across Scotland. You're just taking organs from the animal and stuffing it inside of an animal's organ and then cooking it. Really not a very complicated recipe. Dishes like haggis exist all over the world. It's basically just a giant sausage, if we're being honest. The name haggis comes from the Scots word hog, meaning to chop up, like hack. Just describing the chopped up stuff inside of the sheep's stomach. Not a very creative name, I'll be honest, but yeah, that's the origin of it, either way. The dish is traditionally served with neeps and totties, which are just mashed turnips and mashed potatoes, respectively. I don't know why every country in the UK feels the desire to give stupid, childish names to normal things, but here we are. Haggis is so beloved in Scotland that it's considered to be Scotland's national dish. It's traditionally eaten on Hogmanay, which is New Year's Eve, as well as Burns Night, which is a night wherein the Scottish people celebrate beloved Scottish poet Robert Burns, which is a bit gay if you ask me. Excuse me. Burns actually wrote a poem about haggis, which he called Address to a Haggis, which is read at these Burns Night suppers. Now, it's far too long of a poem for me to read it to you right now, but I can assure you, it's not very good anyway. Robert Burns, by the way, is the dude who wrote Auld Lang Syne. Not that that's relevant to this story in any way, shape, or form, but it's a fun tidbit of trivia you can use to scare away people at a house party. But why is it banned in America? It all begins with old Honest Abe, Abraham Lincoln. Kinda. On May 15th, 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed the legislation to establish the United States Department of Agriculture, commonly known as the USDA. Lincoln referred to the USDA in his final message to Congress as the People's Department. Which, does that imply that he thinks agriculture is people? It's in the name. It's the Department of Agriculture. Why would he call it the People's Department? If that was his intention, why wouldn't he have named it that? I digress. The USDA was originally established to conduct agricultural research and then pass this information along to the American public. But, since they're a government agency, their power has only increased exponentially over time. And don't get me wrong, I understand why they exist, but some of the things they're in control of get a bit silly. Which brings us to 1971. When the story of the so-called haggis ban begins. In 1971, the USDA decided to prohibit the importation of, as well as consumption of, food products containing animal lungs, a key ingredient in traditional haggis. Their reasoning? Concerns about food safety and the potential of spreading a disease called scrapie, which is essentially mad cow disease, but in sheep. Mad sheep disease. Not as catchy. Their logic was and is that the potential exists for stomach bile or phlegm containing dangerous pathogens to make its way into the lungs, which would then be consumed. This concern in addition to the fact that lungs are a very porous organ, and since they functionally work as an air filter for the animal when they're living, the potential exists for the animal to breathe in things that are beyond the farmer's control that you might not want to consume. But your dog can, though. Animal lungs are regularly used in pet foods. They're also the only organ expressly banned for human consumption. Brain? Fine. Stomach? Fine. Genitals? Okay, weirdo, but fine. Lungs? Oh, hell no. Now, the ban hasn't just been a blow to Scottish expats longing for a taste of home. It's also become a point of tension between Scotland and the United States. The Scottish government has made multiple attempts to get the ban lifted. All have failed. The ban was almost lifted in 2021, but slightly more important things like Brexit and, the big coof got in the way of that happening, so it still remains in place. Now, you can still technically get haggis in the United States, but it won't be the real deal, because authentic traditional haggis involves the sheep's lungs in the recipe. For the Scottish-American community, the ban has been a bit more than an inconvenience. Haggis is a staple at these Burns night suppers, as well as other cultural celebrations. And without haggis, you're taking away a little bit of that authenticity. Which, I mean, I get. It'd be like if, you went to another country as an American and you wanted to have a traditional Thanksgiving dinner, and then you find out that turkey is illegal for human consumption in that country, which, depending on how it's cooked or how dry it is, I kind of get. But you understand where I'm coming from. But when there's a will, there's a way. People have resorted to alternative methods to get their haggis, such as recipes that don't involve lungs, or even vegetarian haggis, which, come on, what are you doing? What are you doing? As well as smuggling. Oh yes, you heard me right. There's an entire industry of lung smugglers, which sounds rad as hell. It sounds like something out of like a dystopian future, like the 2010 movie Repo Men. I have completely derailed this video. So anyway, lung smugglers. Coming primarily from Canada, these organ smugglers are working their hardest to make sure everybody on this side of the border gets their sweet, sweet sheep lung fix. From 2016 to 2020, 17,300 ruminant byproducts were seized by U.S. Customs at the border. Now, obviously, this includes all ruminant byproducts, but primarily it's sheep lungs. There's not really much desire for any of the other byproducts, but there certainly is a desire for those delicious lungs. It's estimated that the sheep lung smuggling industry, say that 10 times fast, is valued in the millions of dollars. For reference, the haggis export market in Scotland is valued at just over $8 million, so obviously there's a desire for these things. And apparently nothing beats the real deal lung-filled haggis, because according to Scottish journalist Alex Massey upon eating the American alternative in 2013, the texture of the haggis made without lungs tends to resemble that of a pâté more than the haggis I grew up with in Scotland. Okay, I've never had either version, so... Oh, shit, I just spilled my Red Bull. I've never had either version, so we'll go with what he said. I'll be right back. I need to go get a paper towel. Got a new one. Summer edition. Last year's summer edition was really good. It was so good they kept it around as a new flavor called Sea Blue. It's always sold out. This year's summer edition, not that bad. Listen, if the cigarettes and booze don't kill me, these things certainly will. Over the years, there have been several attempts to get this ban lifted, including in 2010 when Scotland's Rural Affairs Minister visited Washington, D.C. to lobby in an attempt to have the ban overturned. But the USDA stood firm, citing their concerns about the potential for pathogens to exist in the lungs, along with the fact that since the lungs functionally work as an air filter for the animal while they're alive, the farmers really can't control what enters the animal's lungs in the same way they can attempt to control what the animal eats. They compared eating the lungs to eating a dirty air filter. Which, I mean, okay. But this isn't just about food safety. It's about cultural preservation and the right of people to enjoy their cultural traditions and foods, no matter how fucking gross and weird they may seem to others. Would I try haggis? Absolutely. Like, I love lengua. which is just cow tongue, which is kind of objectively pretty gross if you like, put any thought into it. But I've never really understood when people are like weirded out by a food because of the ingredients in it. Like, if you've eaten a hot dog or a chicken nugget, you've objectively eaten a grosser food than haggis. Not that I've had haggis, I'm just saying objectively. Like meat paste made from all the waste parts. Not gonna stop me from eating chicken nuggets and hot dogs, but if you really like take one step back and look at it objectively, it's kind of just as gross. Haggis is basically a giant hot dog. I mean, yeah, it's basically just a giant hot dog now that I'm thinking about it. The festivities don't just end at the consumption of haggis, though. Oh no! Haggis hurling is an event wherein you hurl a haggis. You're judged on accuracy as well as distance. Haggis hurling is an ancient Highland event dating all the way back to the far-off year of 1977, when an Irish guy published an ad claiming it was a 17th century Highland sport that they needed to bring back, just to see how gullible the Scottish people were, and obviously he proved his point. Also, there's a prank in Scotland wherein they tell foreigners that the haggis is a wild animal that roams the Highlands, kind of in the same vein as like drop bears or the jackalope. And I read an article that claimed 33% of American tourists believe that the haggis is a wild animal, which, two things. One, you just made that up. You just made that up. What were you polling people at the airport? You're a liar. And two, why wouldn't they believe you? Like, it's a made-up word for a food that is literally banned in our country. Why would we know what it is? It'd be like if you came to America and got off the plane, and I was like, there's an animal called the porgus. And then you were like, okay, because why wouldn't you believe me? And then I went, you stupid fucking idiot. That's actually, the porgus is a food, not an animal. Get the fuck out of here. Shut the fuck up. Does this ban need to continue? What does the future hold for haggis in the US? While the traditional version may remain banned, the spirit of haggis lives on through creative alternatives, lung smugglers, and a strong Scottish-American community that keeps the tradition alive. But who knows, maybe one day we'll see the ban lifted, and haggis will make its triumphant return to the American shores. But I don't know, nor do I care. I just thought it was kind of interesting. Plus, I wanted an excuse to talk about the lung smuggling thing. Is there merit in protecting American livestock? Obviously. You can eat lungs if you want. They just can't be commercially harvested or distributed. You would just have to, kill the animal yourself. A lot of people don't want to do that. Ooh, God forbid you harvest your own food. By the way, there really isn't even any science that says that the lungs are any more dangerous than any other organ out of an animal. So it's like, why are you only going to ban one and why pick lungs? I don't get it. The federal government will allow you to buy enough Benadryl to see the Hat Man, or enough gasoline and spray paint to huff the myelin sheaths off your neurons until your brain turns to goo. And they'll dump Red 40 into everything else you eat, but God forbid you want to eat a sheep's lung. Whoa, don't eat that part of the sheep that the Scottish do. Ugh, none of that. Am I going to end this video with a rant about how government intervention has overstepped its bounds? Yes, that's how they all end. That's my thing. Not a big fan of the government. Anyway, as always, I've been King Trout. Thank you for watching. And as Kirsten Dunst once almost said, let them eat lungs. Meh, King Trout, in your last video you said you were going to upload more and more often. Not technically true. Technically, I said I would try to upload more and more often, which is kind of half true. Now, in the last month, I was at the Young Americans for Liberty conference in Florida, as well as the Gun Owners of America conference in Tennessee. I've been out politicking, fighting for your rights. If you like freedom, you should be happy. I did have the chance to meet a lot of you at one or both of those conventions, which was nice. Love meeting y'all. Don't be afraid to say hi, snap a picture. Just don't be weird about it. One person was very weird about it. I'm not going to share that story. If you like my shirt, you can pick up your own at kingtroutcomedy.com. That's where you can find all my socials. I'll try to be uploading more and more frequently. But again, thank you for watching. Love you, bye.